I just finished doing these mortise and tenon joints for a pool table project. Once you know the length you're going to need for your beam itself, don't forget that the tenon is going to go through the beam. So in my case, that's an additional 6 inches. These beams are rectangular 6 by 9.5. I need to take the length for this, and I need to add 6 plus 6 to get my total length. And I then cut this beam ready to go for that length. First marks you're going to want to make is you're going to want to draw a line for how far out your tenon will protrude from the end of your beam. And then we need to take a square, and we want to bring those lines all the way around the piece. And I knew right there I just messed up that line. But I can fix it because I can come back over here, and the issue is just my square wasn't quite long enough. Another tool that you can use is a drafting T-square. So a drafting T-square gives you a little bit more length, so when you're making those longer lines, you don't have to flip your speed square back and forth so much. This line is going to become the shoulder, and we're going to cut everything back to this shoulder with the exception of our tenon. Get a good measurement for your beam dimensions. In this case, 6 is pretty darn close, and 9 1/4. And we have 9 1/4 by 6. That's our beam. We want our tenon to be 5 1/2 by 2. So we're going to deal with one side at a time. We're going to take our 9 1/4 and we're going to subtract our 5 1/2. So that's going to give us 3 3/4. That's the amount of waste we're going to remove. But we're going to divide that by 2. So we take our 3 3/4 divided by 2, which gives us 1 7/8. This is how much we're going to cut off on each side to make the long portion. Now we need to do the other dimensions well, so it's 6 minus 2 gives us 4 inches of waste. We take that, divide it by 2, and that's 2 inches per side. Bring these down across the base. And now we're going to do the exact same thing for the nail side. On the end of our beam, we have the outline for our tenon. And we've also got some lines on the faces to help guide our cuts. Our goal now is to cut everything back except for this square, and we want to cut it all the way up to the shoulder here, all the way around our beam. The way these things used to be cut, everything was done with hand saws, chisels, hatchets, and for the holes they would use a brace and bit. It's always good to kind of at least just get a feel for how things were done back then. And then once you get far enough along, you can start doing full back and forth motions with a slight dock. This is a bow saw. It's a rougher cut, but it makes better headway. This is the next saw that I'm going to use. This is definitely much faster. It's going to make a lot of cuts very quickly. It's great for cutting firewood and cutting down trees. It's not a precision instrument. If you have a lot of practice with a chainsaw, you can be pretty precise with them. I don't have a ton of practice with these. I'm going to show you how to use a chainsaw for this, but I don't recommend you do that unless you're very comfortable with a chainsaw. This bandsaw is actually a little small for this kind of work. It will let me cut on the small dimension, but it will not let me cut at the big one. And even at the small one, it's really right at the limits of this machine. And I'm also using a fairly coarse blade. Beams are a little unwieldy, so you do have to kind of make sure everything's ready to go. And then once everything looks good, we go ahead and make our cut. So I probably sped that up in the video, but as you can see, definitely not as quick as the chainsaw, but much quicker than the handsaw. And the difference in the cut from a bandsaw, very nice, smooth, precise, versus jagged, rough from the chainsaw. Skill saws are actually really handy, versatile tools. You can do all kinds of tricks with them, and this is one of them. We're going to be making full depth cuts all the way across. I already went ahead and set my depth so that I will be cutting right up to the point where we want to expose our tenon. And full depth cuts are one of the ones that people get worried about with skill saws. They can be dangerous tools, but they're not as scary as people make them out to be. As long as you don't have loose drawstrings or anything hanging that can get tangled up in the blade, and you keep a good firm grip on the saw. We're gonna make the first cut right along my shoulder line. Now, here's the fun part. Once you have all your slots cut, just take a hammer or a hatchet. And that's it. That gets you 99% of the way there. We can then take a chisel and clean up your corners. If you have a good sharp chisel, you can actually do it pretty well with by hand. If it's an old beater chisel, I like the cheapy ones just for this reason. You can get in there and use them with a hammer and get a little more aggressive with it. I wanted to show one more technique that is more of the old way that these used to be done. So by cutting these slots, they serve as a depth gauge, so I can kind of keep track of my progress. The major chips with the hatchet, like so, and you can make fairly quick progress like that. As you're getting closer, you can always just do it with a regular chisel as well. So now that I'm getting close to my last pass, I can take the back side of the hatchet and one more high spot here I'm going to get out of here. Another thing is these chisels, if you look at them closely, they have a beveled edge to them and then flat on the other. And when you're chiseling, usually everybody puts the flat down and just chisels like this. And that works, but it's hard to control the depth really well. Now if you can get flat like this, you can generally keep it from diving. But another way you can actually use these is you can actually put the bevel side down, lay your bevel side flat in the plane you want to go, and it chisels really well like that too. And it actually doesn't dive as bad. You can kind of control your height a little better with your hand. So now that we've got both our tenons cut on both sides, we're going to cut the mortise.